Hi there, I'm Todd Miller, 7-8 culinary arts teacher with Lakehead Public Schools. I've got another recipe for you to try today, but before we start, a few reminders. First off, if you're unsure about any of the equipment that you're going to be using, make sure you ask someone that has some more kitchen experience, especially when you're working around the stove, oven, and even the microwave. Make sure you understand how they work, and always have a pair of oven mitts handy, even for the microwave. Some of the equipment gets hot in there. If the recipe calls for the use of a knife, make sure that you're really comfortable using a sharp knife like this. Again, ask somebody that has some experience and practice first before using it for your recipe. Always hold the knife with a lot of conviction in one hand, and with your other hand, you want to make sure that you keep your hand in that claw position, kind of like you're holding a tennis ball. Always keep your hand curled back so that the knife doesn't come in contact with your fingertips. Before you start the recipe, make sure you watch the entire video, read the recipe entirely through, make sure you understand everything, and of course, get all of your equipment and your ingredients out first. It makes the recipe go a lot more smoothly. And finally, don't forget, you made the mess, you're in charge of cleaning up. Don't leave a dirty kitchen for someone else. So have a great time cooking. Today we're going to take a look at a classic recipe. Now, classic in that most people know how to make this from a box, and that is mac and cheese, or as we call in Canada, KD. Nothing wrong with this. I eat it myself sometimes. Doesn't take that long to make. It's pretty easy, but we can make it just as fast at home with all natural ingredients. We don't have to use that questionable orange powder that way. So we'll put that aside. We're going to make mac and cheese right from scratch, and it's going to take just as long as making it from a box. So we're going to start off with our pasta, because we got to, that's what takes longest, right? Is for the pasta to cook. So I've already got some water boiling here. And I have 250 grams, which is about 2 cups of elbow macaroni, the same kind of macaroni you find in KD. But you can use any type of pasta you want. So I've got my water boiling already. I'm just going to put my pasta in there. I just put the lid on to help it come back to a boil, but as soon as I see that it's coming back to a boil, I take the lid off so that it doesn't boil over. And we'll just turn the heat up a bit now, and we'll just let that do its thing. Over here I have a small pot. Now, so instead of making the sauce using milk, butter, and the powdery orange stuff, we're going to use real ingredients, which still includes milk, butter, and just a couple of other things. I'm going to start off with the butter. I've got my Slate River Dairy butter here, and I've measured out 2 tablespoons. So I'm going to put that in my little sauce pot, and we're just going to let that melt over low heat. We're going to be taking that butter, adding some flour, and we're going to make something called a roux. Roux is spelled R-O-U-X. It's a French term. We use a lot of French terms when we're cooking. And a roux is just basically a thickener. This is so fantastic. It's great to use for soups, for sauces. What we're going to make right now you can use as a cheese sauce for we can use as a cheese sauce for vegetables, anything like that. So that's sizzling away, so we're going to add our flour. We're actually going to cook it. If we add the flour right now, it's going to have kind of a floury taste if we just sort of leave it like that. So once we add the flour, we're going to give it a whisk around, and we're going to cook it for about 30 seconds. This turns our flour a slight brown color, and it gives it a kind of a nuttier taste, which goes really well with our cheese. Just mix that up there. And then the next ingredient we'll add is our milk, just like we would add to regular mac and cheese. So in this case, I'm going to add 1 1/4 cups of milk. Some recipes on the internet or in recipe books, they call for something called evaporated milk, which you buy in a can. I find that's a little too rich. I personally don't like the flavor. If you really like it, you can use evaporated milk as well, but I'm just going to use regular whole milk. So I'm going to slowly pour that milk in as I keep stirring. And I just don't want any lumps to form. I also don't want to spill any, so you got to pour it fast enough so you don't drip any, but at the same time, don't pour it too fast. There we go. See, I was stirring the whole time. There we go. And I've got a nice, even sauce right now, but it's really, really watery. And this is the magic of a roux, is right now, it's very watery, but as the milk heats up, it's going to interact with that flour and the butter, and it's going to become much, much thicker. Nice, thick sauce, and that's what we want for the basis of our mac and cheese. So that's just give this a little stir over here just to break up the pasta to make sure it all doesn't stick together. I should be using a spoon, but all I brought today was a knife, so careful not to scrape the bottom of my pan. There we go. Now, pasta has to cook for different amounts of time depending on the pasta. It's always great to check on the box. Elbow macaroni is a 9-minute pasta, meaning we want to cook it for 9 minutes. After 9 minutes, we are going to test it, and we're testing it to see if it's something we call al dente. Now, we use a lot of French terms when we're cooking, but when it comes to pasta, we use Italian terms. And al dente is Italian for to the tooth, meaning that when you take a bite of it, there's a little bit of resistance on your tooth. It's not really mushy. Of course, it's not really crackly and crunchy. It's kind of in between, and that's when we know that it's done. But like I said, you can use any type of pasta that you want for this. There's some really great ones out there. You can use fusilli, you can use little shell ones, you can use ones that are like bow tie. There's one that we call in Canada, we call Scooby-Doo pasta. That's a nice round shape. Whatever kind of pasta you like to use. I prefer the shells, but today, because we're making it like mac and cheese, well, I wanted to use the regular elbow. So I do kind of stir this now and again. If I don't, it will burn. But like I said, what we're looking for right now is for that sauce to start thickening up a little bit. Once our pasta is done, we will have to drain it, and then we'll add the rest of our ingredients to the sauce. I'll just get a little spoon here so I can show you right now. It's just starting to thicken up a little tiny bit, but we're going to get much thicker as it cooks. Now, when we're done making this, that's a great bowl of mac and cheese that I think anybody will enjoy. However, you can take it one step further. A great mac and cheese can also be made into a meal using a casserole dish like this. We're just going to spray our casserole dish. Once you've made your mac and cheese, you can pour it in there, cook it in a 350-degree oven for about 20 minutes. Sprinkle some extra cheese on top, 5 more minutes in the oven. It's going to be fantastic. And it's really cool because you can add anything to that. You can add any vegetables you like. You can add red or green peppers. You can add tomatoes. You can add zucchini if you like zucchini, some broccoli, all sorts of stuff. And as far as protein, you can add ground beef, cooked ground beef to that. You can add tuna. You can add cooked chicken. You can add tofu if you'd rather have it vegetarian. You can add bacon. You can add sausages. You can add hot dogs. Whatever you like. Same thing. You just cook it in the oven for about 20 minutes, a little cheese on top, another 5 minutes more. This recipe that we're making today feeds 2 really hungry people, or 3 kind of average eating people. If you make it in a casserole dish with some extra vegetables and meat, you can make it easily for 4 people that way. Now look at my sauce. Now all of a sudden it's bubbling up. It's much thicker than it was before. It pours very slowly off of the spoon. I have a great sauce that's pretty much all ready to go. I have to add a couple of ingredients to it. First, I'm going to add some salt. We need 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. I don't have a 3/4 teaspoon scoop, so I use half of a teaspoon, which is the same as 2/4. And I use another 1/4 teaspoon for 3/4. So 1/4 and 1/2 gives us 3/4. We're also going to add something called dry mustard. If you don't have this at home, don't panic. Your recipe's not going to fail without it. You can leave it out if you need to. However, it does improve the flavor of the cheese. It doesn't taste like mustard. It's not going to look like a goopy mustard mess. It's nice and dry, and I'm just putting a 1/2 teaspoon in there, and it just really accentuates the flavor of the cheese, just gives it a much better taste. You can also add pepper at this point as well, if you like pepper in your mac and cheese. I do, but some people don't. So I suggest don't add the pepper directly to here, just put the pepper up for people to add themselves after. Just give that one last stir. Check on my pasta. I'm almost ready to try my pasta, but now I'm going to turn the heat off on my sauce, which is nice and thick now, and we'll add the cheese. I grated up about 1.5 cups, 1 to 1.5 cups of cheddar cheese today. But you can use any kind of cheese you want. If you like marble cheese, if you want a little spicier, you can use a jalapeno type cheese or a Monterey Jack. Havarti is a nice smooth flavor, whatever works for you. I'm going to take a scoop of that cheese now and pour it in and give it a little stir. Even with the heat turned off, the cheese is going to melt. You can try to add all the cheese at once, but I find it gets really kind of clumpy that way. And add another big scoop of cheese and give that another stir. My sauce is now starting to turn a nice orange color, but a natural orange color, not an artificial orange color like we get with KD. Get a nice natural orange color going here. And like I said, this sauce also works really well if you want to put it on top of vegetables like broccoli or cauliflower. It's fantastic for that too. And keep in mind, it's taking me just as long to do this as it would with a box, because I have to wait for my pasta to boil anyways. And now, because I'm not baking in the oven, I don't need to keep any extra cheese back to sprinkle on top after. So I can just mix that in. And now, go back and check my pasta, give it a stir. I'm going to take one out here. Careful, it is hot. As I take a bite, it's not crunchy in my mouth. A little bit of resistance when I bite on it with my tooth, but it's not really mushy. So we're pretty much just at the point that we call al dente, cooked to the tooth, and we're ready to drain this. Best to drain it right into a colander, which I have right here. I want to drain that into a colander over the sink, and you want to give it a good shake to make sure that any of the water that's inside of the little bits of pasta get out. So I'll go over to the sink here, watching carefully for the steam that comes up as well. Get all my pasta out of my pot. Make sure I don't put that on my countertop. I put it on the edge of the stove so it doesn't burn the countertop. Give it a little shake and see little bits of water coming out the bottom. And then I'll return it back to my pot. Bring it over here. I've got my cheese sauce, which is a beautiful thick yellow color, orangey yellow color now. Put my whisk down, and now I just add my cheese sauce directly to my pasta. You might not even need to use all of it, it's up to you. Some people like it really cheesy, and this does make a very cheesy sauce. Give that a good mix. Now I've got my beautiful pasta, which is cooked al dente, got a fantastic homemade cheese sauce. I can add, like I said, anything I want to, bake it in a casserole, or I could put it in a bowl and eat it right away. Maybe with ketchup, if you're into that, maybe with a little hot sauce, some Tabasco sauce, or some Heartbeat hot sauce from Thunder Bay, whatever works for you. So, just in the same amount of time that we made a box of mac and cheese, we can make our own homemade, absolutely delicious mac and cheese. Try it out, and happy cooking.